next tool that we're going to look at is the tool that allows us to do reflecting. So when we reflect an object, Illustrator is going to flip the object across an invisible vertical or horizontal axis. So we need to also designate the reference point. So is it going to be anchored from the center, from the top, from the bottom? And that's another thing that we will be setting up. Let's fit all of our artboards in the window. Command Option 0. And we're going to look down here below the artboard, and with our zoom tool, we're going to drag across this curly shape down here. Now, when I did this at school, the scrubby zoom is turned on, so as I'm dragging, it zooms in. Here at home, evidently my graphic card isn't as good, and it has to do it at the end. But at any rate, we want to zoom in on this swirl. You can tell that there's some sort of a gradient in here. It kind of goes from nothing and then it fades into this teal. That's something we'll learn about later, but I just want you to notice that this is not a hard edge, it's a transparency issue. All right. With our selection tool, we're going to select this curly shape. There's the bounding box around it. We're going to do an edit copy, which is Command C. That's an easy one. But we're going to do a different version of pasting. We're going to do an edit, paste in place. Shift, Command V. A little bit different. This is going to put a copy of it in place. In other words, directly on top of it. And we really don't even know that that happened for sure without looking at our layers panel. Then we're going to go and get our reflect tool, which is nested, and over here we've done the scale tool so far, so the reflect tool is next. Notice that we have our anchor point. This is a bounding box, so again, picture that rectangle around this whole thing, and this marks the center. But we don't want our reference point to be in the center, so we're going to click on the straight part of the path to set our invisible axis down here instead. So this is the part where things are going to flip horizontally or vertically. All right, with the artwork still selected, we're going to move our pointer off to the right and we're going to drag clockwise. And as we drag, we're going to hold the Shift key, which is going to constrain it to 45% increments. When we get it, so let's start doing that. So we start to pull clockwise, we're going to hold Shift. And I went all the way to whatever reading this was. It went away already, but I took my copy and I flipped it below. So hold your cursor off to the right, start dragging clockwise, hold Shift, and when it looks like this, let go. All right, with our selection tool in the toolbar, and this shape still selected, we're going to go into the More Options of the Transform box up here. We are going to turn off Scale, Strokes, and Effects for this one. Then, with this bounding box, we're going to drag the lower right corner away to make it this lower piece slightly bigger, like that. All right, now we want to group these two pieces, so I'm just going to make a selection marquee that includes both of them, and I'm going to group them. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say Group. I'm going to zoom out a bit so I can see that in some of the artboard. There it is finally. And we're going to drag this group up into our artboard. I'm going to put it up here by the title Wind Speed. And then I'm going to just view that artboard, so Command 0. And then I want to make a few copies of this wind. So I'm just going to, it's already selected, so I'm going to Option and drag away. And I'm just going to add some more wind. Whoops, took the wrong selection. So select this and Option drag on this. With this one selected, I'm going to Option drag away from it. Whatever. You can add some more wind to your page. All right, that was reflecting. Makes sense. We lock down our anchor point and then we tell it to make a copy on the left or the right or up or down. So if you picture like a half of a butterfly, that's a pretty symmetrical thing. You could draw it all out and then you could make a copy of it and flip it on the axis. And we'll be doing that in the future as well. But reflecting shapes is a really easy way to make symmetrical objects. All right. Next, we're going to rotate objects, and there's lots of ways to do this, and they can be precise or freeform. We've rotated using the double arrows on the corner of bounding boxes so far. So we are going to now work with our person in the raincoat down here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And we are going to use our selection tool and select this group. We're going to move the pointer off one of the corners and we're going to see that rounded arrow that I was talking about. And we're going to drag counterclockwise and we're going to hold shift, keeping us in 45-degree increments until we get to 90 degrees so that the person is tipped. And then let go of your mouse and then let go of the keyboard modifier. It has to be in that order. So the selection tool rotates things by the center of the object by default. So it tipped this person by the center. The next thing we're going to do is use the rotate tool, which allows us to rotate around a different point. By simply hovering around a bounding box, it's always going to be anchored to the center. We can see that up here again. All right. All right, we need to hold our handbar down and start pulling to the left or maybe zoom out, but this is the object that we want to work with next. So have that visible, and with our selection tool, we're going to click to select this, and we notice that it's a group. There's a light gray, a dark gray, and then a longer brown piece. All right, the rotate tool in the toolbar is now probably hidden underneath the shear or the reflect tool, whichever one we were in. We were in the reflect, so we need to go back to the rotate tool. Once we have the rotate tool selected, we're going to move our cursor over the bottom edge of the selected artwork, which in this case is this brown piece that's like the pole of a flag or whatever this is. And we're going to click down here, and that's going to set our reference point at the bottom. So instead of rotating off of the middle point and tipping left or right, this is going to rotate, this is going to stay locked down, and things are going to rotate left, bottom, or right, depending on what we do. So we just set the actual reference point that we wanted by using this rotate tool. All right, we're going to move the pointer off of the right side of our artwork, and we're going to start to drag clockwise. And as we drag, we're going to press both Option and Shift. Shift is going to make it tip in 45-degree increments. Option is going to make a copy of it. So Shift and Option and start dragging. Whoops, got to undo that. All right, I got to anchor that down again. Down here is where we want you to go. All right. With our cursor off to the right side, as we start to drag, hold Shift and Option. And when we get down to 90 degrees, we're going to let go of our mouse and then our keyboard modifiers. So it made a copy and tipped it to 90 degrees, which is exactly what we wanted. Now, instead of doing that again, we can do kind of a shortcut. So Object, Transform. The very top option is always what you just did last. So in this case, it's Transform again. The shortcut is Command D. But if we click that, it's going to do another copy at another 90 degrees. And if we do it one more time, Object, Transform again, it's going to do yet another copy at another negative 90 degrees. So if I zoom out a smidge, we've kind of made a top of a windmill. And with our selection tool, we're going to marquee select them all and group them. So come over here or do a Command G on your keyboard. And now we want to instead of this going straight up, down, left, right, like northeast, southwest, we want to kind of tip it to the right so that it kind of has a little bit more energy or looks a little bit more active. So with our group still selected, we're going to double click on the rotate tool over here in the toolbar. And that's going to bring up another one of these windows that we can do some specific details in here. And in this dialog, we're going to change the angle to be 45 and hit tab. I had to hit tab so that it would take it into account because I had the preview on and I wanted to see what that was going to do. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to say, okay. Then we're going to zoom out and we're going to take this piece with our selection tool and we're going to bring it up to the top of our windmill. Probably going to have to zoom in to see how accurate that was, but not bad. So I'm not sure where you want to position it in the center of that thing, whatever. But we just made like the blades of our windmill, and I actually have my wind behind it in this case, which is fine. All right, that is up and in place, and we can click away to deselect, and we'll move on to another tool.